Whisper, ever wondered what lurks in the shadows of your Airbnb? The places we think of as escapes, as temporary homes, sometimes they hold secrets, dark secrets. And tonight, we're diving headfirst into those shadows. We've got 3 stories, guys. 3 true accounts from Airbnb guests who experienced the unthinkable. So, get comfy, turn off the lights, and maybe hold on to something or someone. You're gonna need it. Our first story takes us to a charming cabin in the woods. You know the type, right? Rustic, secluded, the kind of place that begs you to unplug and unwind. Our guest, let's call her Sarah, thought she was in for a peaceful solo retreat. She craved that escape, that chance to reconnect with nature and herself. The first day was everything she'd hoped for. Hiking trails blanketed in fallen leaves, the smell of pine needles in the air, a quiet so profound it was almost a presence itself. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows through the trees, the atmosphere shifted. A chill settled over the cabin, a chill that seemed to seep in from the woods themselves. Sarah tried to shake it off, attributing it to the dropping temperature. She built a fire, the crackling flames casting a warm glow over the living room, and settled in with a book. But the feeling persisted. She kept catching glimpses of movement out of the corner of her eye, shadows flitting just beyond the reach of the firelight. Each time she turned to look directly, there was nothing there. Nerves on edge, she decided to turn in early. As she lay in bed, listening to the wind howling outside, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Then, she heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible creak from the living room. Her heart pounded in her chest. She told herself it was just the old house settling, but then another creak, this one closer, as if coming from just outside her bedroom door. Fear coiled in her stomach. She lay frozen, listening intently. Silence. Minutes stretched into an agonizing eternity. Just when she thought she might be imagining things, she heard it again, a slow, deliberate dragging sound right outside her door. It was then that she knew, with chilling certainty, that she was not alone. Panic seized her. She scrambled out of bed, her hand trembling as she reached for her phone. No signal. Of course. The dragging sound continued back and forth, like a macabre lullaby. She backed away from the door, her eyes frantically searching the room for a weapon, an escape. There was a window, small and high up on the wall. Could she reach it? The dragging stopped. She held her breath, her entire body taut with terror. Then a gentle scratching sound like fingernails on wood began at her bedroom door. Sarah didn't hesitate. She grabbed her phone and her car keys, the only possessions she cared about in that moment, and made a dash for the window. Our next story takes us from the seclusion of the woods to the bustling heart of New Orleans. A city known for its vibrant culture, its music, and let's be honest, its haunted history. So maybe it's no surprise that an Airbnb nestled in the heart of the French Quarter would come with a few unexpected guests. Our guests this time were a young couple, newly engaged and eager to soak up the city's unique charm. Let's call them Ben and Emily. They found their Airbnb online, a charming historic apartment with wrought iron balconies overlooking the lively street below. The pictures online were stunning, promising a romantic and unforgettable getaway. And at first, everything was perfect. They spent their days exploring the city, indulging in beignets and chicory coffee, and getting lost in the enchanting labyrinth of the French Quarter. But as with all our stories, darkness began to creep in as the sun went down. It started subtly, a faint scratching sound in the walls at night, easily dismissed as old pipes or maybe a mischievous mouse. Then, the feeling of being watched, a prickling sensation on the back of their necks that seemed to follow them around the apartment. One night, as they lay in bed, the scratching returned, louder this time, more insistent. It seemed to be coming from the wall behind the headboard. Ben, ever the pragmatist, tried to rationalize it away. Old buildings were full of strange noises, right? But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then the whispering started. At first it was so faint they thought it was just the wind whistling through the alleyway outside their window. But as the night wore on, it grew louder, more distinct. Whispers, just on the edge of comprehension, weaving in and out of the darkness. Ben tried to convince himself and Emily that it was just the sounds of the city, the murmur of voices from the street below carrying on the breeze. But deep down, a seed of unease had been planted. The next day, they decided to consult the apartment's history books, hoping to find a logical explanation for the strange occurrences. And that's when they stumbled upon a chilling tale. The building, it turned out, had once been a hospital, its rooms witness to unimaginable suffering and loss. A chill ran down their spines as they read about the countless souls who had passed within its walls. Suddenly, the scratching and whispering took on a whole new meaning. That night, neither of them slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the wind sent shivers down their spines. They lay awake, listening to the symphony of the city, their imaginations running wild. As dawn broke, casting a pale light through the window, they decided they couldn't stay another night. They packed their bags, their excitement about the trip replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. Our final story brings us to a sprawling Victorian mansion perched on a windswept cliff overlooking the ocean. It's the kind of place that practically screams haunted, with its gabled windows, overgrown ivy, and an air of faded grandeur. Our guest, a young writer named Alex, was immediately drawn to the house's eerie beauty. He was searching for inspiration, a place where he could escape the distractions of everyday life. He found it in this isolated mansion, its very walls seemingly whispering tales of the past. He booked it instantly, ignoring the nagging voice in the back of his mind that warned him it might be a mistake. He arrived late at night, the only sound the crashing of waves against the cliffs below. The caretaker, a stoic old woman with eyes that seemed to hold ancient secrets, showed him around the house. As she handed him the keys, she offered a chilling piece of advice. "Don't go into the attic." Her words sent a shiver down Alex's spine. Of course, that only made him more curious. He tried to brush it off, telling himself it was just an old woman's superstition. But as the days turned into nights, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. Objects moved inexplicably, lights flickered, and he could have sworn he heard whispers coming from the locked attic door. One night, driven by a morbid curiosity he couldn't ignore, he decided to investigate. He found the attic key hidden in a dusty book on the library shelf. His hand trembled as he inserted it into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a cavernous space shrouded in darkness. The air grew heavy, thick with the weight of unseen eyes. As Alex stepped inside, a cold gust of wind slammed the door shut behind him. Panic surged through him. He fumbled for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. He was trapped. Suddenly, the room was filled with the sound of laughter, high-pitched and chilling, echoing all around him. He spun around searching for the source of the sound, but the attic was empty. Then he saw it, a child's doll, perched on a dusty old rocking horse in the corner. Its porcelain face was contorted into a grotesque grin, its glass eyes seeming to follow his every move. Terror rooted him to the spot. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't tear his gaze away from the doll. As he stared, the laughter grew louder, more frenzied, until it seemed to be coming from inside his own head. He couldn't take it anymore. He had to get out. Mustering all his strength, he lunged for the door, throwing his weight against it. This time it swung open, revealing the hallway beyond. He didn't waste a second, scrambling out of the attic and slamming the door shut behind him. He ran, not stopping until he reached the relative safety of his room. He didn't sleep that night, haunted by the memory of the doll's malevolent grin and the echoing laughter that seemed to follow him from the attic. The next morning, he packed his bags and fled the mansion, leaving behind the unsettling mysteries of the attic and the chilling laughter that continued to echo in his nightmares. Music slowly fades. So, the next time you're scrolling through Airbnb listings, tempted by a charming cabin, a historic apartment, or a grand old mansion, remember these stories. Remember that sometimes the most inviting retreats can harbor the darkest secrets. And always, Always trust your instincts. If a place feels off, if something doesn't feel right, it's probably best to just find another place to stay. Whisper, sleep tight, and think twice before your next Airbnb booking.